Greetings and welcome to another episode, long awaited for some of you, of the Hammer and Umpire podcast. As always, I'm your host, Kevin Weber. I know I'm always saying it. I've been busy. Well, I have been busy. I've been working quite a few baseball games, trying to teach high school kids some history and keep them motivated. I've got a senior in high school who's ready to graduate as valedictorian. Very proud of her. And, go on to college and do all the stuff that I hope that she's able to accomplish in her life. So it's been a crazy but fun spring. And, on top of that, I do high school and now, of course, also summer league assigning. So it's just always a crazy time of year. And I'm always thinking about trying to make a podcast and things that I could put into it. And it's hard to find the time. But I've got some time. I'm sitting here in a hotel room working some games in the MAC series I've got this weekend. And I've got some time to do this, and I put together a few segments. If you hear a train in the background on any of the segments, that's because there's a train that runs by this hotel frequently. So if that happens, then I'm going to just leave it in there. I'm not going to re-record the whole thing. It's just what it is, I guess, is some background noise for you. But anyway, I've had a pretty good spring myself. I was lucky enough to work myself into a pretty good schedule for collegiate baseball. I've worked, all levels as I usually do, junior college and NAIA and D3, D2, and D1. I've gotten the most Division I games that I've gotten so far in my career, which I'm very pleased with, and hopefully I will do well enough in all of these to continue to get those, and who knows, maybe even pick up a couple more. So postseason is upon us soon for college and then high school very soon after that here, at least in the state of Michigan. So I hope to work some of those games and see how that goes as well. I've got a few segments for you today. I got stuff on infield fly, runner's lane, pace of play, three-man that we're using in youth baseball, and evaluations and, seeking evaluations and trying to make yourself a better umpire, because that's always our goal, is to get a little bit better every game that we work. And, there's lots of knowledge out there, little snippets of knowledge that everybody has that they can pass on to one another and make us all a little bit better on the baseball field. So that's what I got for you this episode. It's good to be back, and I hope you enjoy it. Sit back and relax and listen to another episode of the Hammer and Umpire podcast. Well, I've only been able to do a handful of high school baseball games so far this season. I've been, lucky enough to have a predominant number of my games be collegiate games. But when I've done the maybe four or so I've done so far, I notice a striking difference between the pace of play. And that has most everything to do with the pitch clock and other timing rules that have been implemented in college baseball that have not been implemented in high school baseball. I don't know if they will be. I really wish that they would be in some future year. But, in college baseball, of course, you've got your 6 conferences, defensive conferences. 3 can be with a coach. And the other ones can be with players, but if players use 4 or 5 of them, then coaches only get 1 or 2. And of course, then they have their 3 offensive conferences. So that's a big thing, because frequently, if I'm doing a high school game, the catcher's like, "Can I go talk to the pitcher?" And you do that. Or they're after the warm-up pitchers, they're out there talking to the guy, or the shortstop walks over to them, or whatever it might be. And then if we have a conference, we have the offensive team, the base runners or what have you, batter, going down and talking to their coach while they're out there on the mound. You can't do that in college baseball unless there's a pitching change Otherwise, you'd have to use one of your offensive conferences. So those things slow things down. Also, of course, we have the 120 seconds between innings, which is stringently enforced, or should be. I think most of the guys I work with, pretty much all the guys I work with do so, and I assume that is the case in most of college baseball. Yeah, we're supposed to have a time between innings as well for high school, but nobody really keeps track of it. So there's a lot of lackadaisical players and coaches and such, or the catcher was caught on base or something, they're slow to get out there and those kind of things. So that slows things down too. But more than anything is the pitch clock. Now we have the 20 seconds, right? So the pitcher, once he is on the mound or the play is called, he's got to pitch or start his motion within 20 seconds. Batter needs to be in the box and alert to the pitcher within 10 seconds. If either does not do so, it's either going to be a strike on the batter or a ball called on the pitcher. Pitchers, of course, must make legitimate pickoff throws. They can't step off. If they step off, they get one reset per batter, right? Otherwise, it's a violation. And, it's been a bit of a struggle here and there, especially early in the season for those in the warm weather areas where they're playing games. But now, at this point of the season, here in May, and even a little bit before that, of course, too, you get guys step in the box. They stay in the box. They're ready to hit. Pitcher gets the ball. They're getting their sign. They're ready to pitch. And it's cut 20 to 30 minutes off of games. I mean, I would say the average length of a 9-inning college game is about 2.5 hours. I mean, there's frequently you can get less than that. Now, of course, there's times where it's longer. Maybe there's a lot of runs or walks or things like that. But it has nothing to do with guys wasting time stepping out, getting signs all the time, calling timeout or asking for timeout, and all those kind of things that we had beforehand. So it's a striking difference for sure. One that makes it a little frustrating sometimes to do high school baseball now because of that. And I know the listeners out there that, your predominant thing is high school baseball, which is a great thing, by the way. I mean, I'm not trying to rip on high school baseball, but it is something that you really do notice if you kind of go back and forth between the two. So I just want to share that with you. I hope that the federation, the National Federation of High Schools, maybe looks at that. How would you do it? You got to have umpires with either a stopwatch or one of the box timers. We have box timers that most guys have in college baseball. That, you have a little switch that goes up and down. You got one switch that goes up for the 120 seconds, one that goes down and buzzes at 10 seconds and buzzes big time at 20 seconds. It could be calibrated for whatever the high school does. I know high school football uses those for their timing. It's the same basic box, okay? So it certainly could be done there for high school. Guys would have to go spend $40 on a box, of course, and some people maybe wouldn't want to do that. But then again, you could try to do it with your stopwatch. It's a little trickier. I'm sure most guys have a stopwatch and they could be looking at it. But if you got to look and you're trying to look for balks, it's, the base guy that's keeping track of all this stuff. That can be a little tricky, but it can be done. All right. So, and you'd have to, of course, get local associations and, of course, statewide groups that implement it properly and train people. But if you did so, we could cut that down because it is a problem that we have the inability to play high school doubleheaders in the daylight that we have available. You start at 4:30, whatever, 4:15, and you get one game in, and you're lucky if you start the second one at 7 o'clock. And early in the season, you maybe only got an hour of daylight left. So it used to not be that way. And I know I'm sounding like an old guy, but, I played high school baseball too. We played doubleheaders all the time. Maybe my memory's bad, but I don't remember not finishing them. We always got all the games in. We got all the innings in because, I don't know, we stepped in, we played, and we didn't have all this lollygagging and stuff that we see nowadays. So that has been a problem. That's why it takes so much longer to play those games and get them in. And it's very infrequent that you can start a 4 o'clock doubleheader and get everything in. That's definitely in the minority of times that happens. So anyway, those are my thoughts on the pace of play, I guess, between high school baseball and college baseball and things that I've noticed this season here in 2023. So I'd like to talk for a few minutes about runner's lane and runner's lane interference. If you've paid any attention to baseball over the last several years, we've seen plays that have happened with runner's lane interference at all levels of baseball that have been controversial. And they're really only controversial because most people do not understand the rule or the intent of the rule. So I'm an historian of baseball. I really like baseball history in all aspects. I mean, obviously, I like umpiring and the history of that too. And I suspect that, like most baseball rules, the runner's lane rule was put in because old-time players, 100-plus years ago, probably more than that, probably 125 years ago, would run wherever they felt like it to interfere with a potential throw that's out in front of the plate that the catcher or the pitcher, or maybe the third baseman as well, might be making to throw to first base. So if you did not have the rule, you would have a batter runner that would run zigzagging possibly toward the mound, back and forth, doing whatever he could to make it difficult to block the view or the path of the potential flight of the ball to try to get to first base and, maybe get hit in the back by it or somewhere and make it a wild throw and make it difficult, basically obstructing, we know we use the word obstruction for the defense, but he'd be obstructing the view of the potential thrower toward first base, okay? That's what guys would do. I bet you they were doing it back in the day. And finally they said, we can't have this. If the ball is in play in fair territory, you should have a reasonable chance to pick up the ball and try to throw it to first, and the guy can't run in your way. So thus we have, the 45-foot line and the runner's lane, and, if you're inside that, including the lines, you're good to go, right? So we see that sometimes where a guy is running and he's in the dirt, in fair territory, out of the running lane, all right? And he's running down there toward the base and he gets hit in the back. Well, he is in the guy's way, okay, of where he needs to throw it. So, unfortunately, we don't see this called enough, almost at all levels. Okay, the really high levels of college baseball and professional baseball, all levels of professional baseball, they do get it. But definitely amateur baseball, let's say lower level college and down below, we don't really see it called as much as it probably should because it takes place more than you might think. Fortunately, most of the time, a guy might be running illegally, and the guy makes a throw, and he's out anyway. So, it's all good. But remember, for my newer umpires out there or guys that maybe haven't paid as much attention to this as they should, the batter runners is not required to stay in the runner's lane. But if he does run outside the runner's lane, like in fair territory, and he interferes with a fielder receiving a throw at first base, he could be called out for interference. And you should get that, all right? I know you might get garbage from people, but you'll do what you're supposed to do, and, sometimes that's just the way it is. So the lines are considered part of the running lane. The batter runner is permitted to exit the 3-foot lane by means of a step, a stride, to reach or slide in the immediate vicinity of first base for the sole purpose of touching the base. So they're able to do that at the end. And it's there to protect the fielder from taking a throw because if you've watched enough baseball, you probably have seen a collision at first base, and usually that first baseman gets the worst of it. Sometimes you get a broken arm or something there. Okay, so that's the main thing too. It matters what level of baseball, but most of the time, the throw must be able to be caught. I know there's some different rule sets that might have that a little bit different, so check what you're working with there. A throw must be made. If a throw is made by a fielder and it hits the runner while he's out of the runner's lane in the back, usually that's going to be an indication that it's interference, and you need to call that and call them out. And then, of course, if there were other runners on base, they go back to their original base, right, at the time of the pitch. So if the batter runner is out of the lane and the play is completed by the defense, he catches it, makes a great catch over there, which usually is what happens. No interference is called unless the batter runner interferes with the first baseman making a throw to another base, and that's a different situation. So anyway, I know there's lots of plays out there. If you just Google runner's lane interference, you'll see lots of things. And you need to understand what the rule is. It's usually the home plate umpire's call because he should be coming up the line to see that. It certainly could be called by a first base umpire. He can get a view of it, but he's obviously got a safe out call and other things to work with at that time too. So he's got a lot going on there, but he could certainly get it if he sees it as well. All right, but usually it's a home plate umpire's kind of call. Anyway, that was just something that was on my mind there. I guess a little pet peeve that I have because you see this on broadcasts all the time where anytime something like this happens, we get the talking heads out there that have no clue what the rule is, and they say, oh, it should be out. And it would be a disaster if they got rid of that rule. It needs to be in place. It just needs to be implemented properly. And I guess, players need to understand why it's there as well.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the vehicle owner's manual for important feature limitations and information.
So another topic I'd like to discuss with all of you, especially my newer umpires out there, is the infield fly. A ruling and a rule that is confusing to some people that watch baseball. Hopefully not to us umpires out there, all right? So just to reiterate and get everybody on the same page, we know an infield fly is not a line drive or a bunt attempt, but it's a ball that can be caught by an infielder with ordinary effort. And it's only with first and second, and the base is loaded, and less than 2 outs. So the pitcher, the catcher, any outfielder who stations himself in the infield on the play could be considered an infielder for the purpose of the rule. It's also, kind of common knowledge, I guess, that an infield fly is an ordinary effort that could be handled by an infielder. So if an outfielder were playing quite shallow and he came in to catch it, but, the third baseman or the second baseman or the shortstop or something could have also caught it fairly easily with routine effort, it is also an infield fly. We don't have some demarcation line like the dirt or the grass, that, means that it's a potential infield fly or not, okay? That would be maybe easier if it was, but that's not the way it is. What is the purpose of the rule? So when I'm thinking about this, I'm always thinking it's to prevent the defense from getting a cheap double or possibly triple play, if there's nobody out, right? Because I'm sure a long time ago, before the turn of, the 20th century, there were guys that were doing this frequently where they would just act like they were going to catch it. They let it drop. Then as we got the force outs there, right? So boom, 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 they throw it around. They get a double or triple play pretty easily. So the purpose is to not, it's to protect the runners from being forced to run so that they would get double or tripled up, okay? So that's what you're looking for when you see it. The ball's up in the air. You usually have a little more time than you think. You can point it infield fly and yell that out. Infield fly fair if it's close to a line. Once you see that there's a infielder there or in the area that could make the play with ordinary effort, okay? I had a play like this similar, this similar kind of situation a couple of weeks ago in a collegiate game. First and second, I don't remember if there's 1 out or 0 outs, but it doesn't really matter. Anyway, pop up, back of shortstop, just a few steps onto the grass. Shortstop, got there first. There were some other fielders coming and got under it. I got my infield fly. And the runner stayed because, we know the runners are not, if it is dropped, they are not forced to advance. That is the advantage for them. Anyway, he caught the ball, and the guy stayed there. The third base coach, and this is protecting his runners, okay? He's like, why is that an infield fly, even though the guy caught it. And he was actually saying this to my partner who had come up a little bit toward the third baseline there. He didn't really say anything to me, but it's like the whole point is that your runners are not going to get a cheap double play. If you call it and there is not a cheap double play, even if the ball is dropped, but usually guys don't know that they don't have to run, and they do, and then they get doubled up, right? We see that happen all the time because they're not taught properly. But then you got it right. If you avoided a cheap double play on a ball, then you probably made the right call on calling the infield fly. That's kind of the point. Now we know that we can have, it's not really intentional, intentional dropping, you got to make contact with the ball. But I saw a play recently in a Major League game, pop up right by first base by the cutout. There's a runner on first, I think a runner on first only. And he's, maybe 5-10 feet off the base. First baseman goes over, looks like he's going to catch it, and then he moves right out of the way, lets it drop, picks it up, touches first base for the force out, throws it to second, they give him a run down, tag him out, they get a double play. That's a smart baseball. I mean, you can do that. That's within the rules of the game. That is allowed. But you can't do that with first and second, and you can't do that with bases loaded because, you're almost guaranteed to get some kind of double play or triple play if you can do that, all right, because you got forces everywhere, right? So anyway, for my new guys out there, make sure that, you take your time on your infield flies. And if you're thinking, if he decides to let this drop, they could get a cheap double play. If you're thinking that as the ball's up in the air, then you need to get that. As long as that guy's there and he can reasonably make that catch. He's got to make some diving catch, shoot catch, going backwards over the shoulder kind of thing. That's not routine, right? We know what that is. But if it's something that he should be able to catch for the level of baseball that you're working at that time, then you can get your infield fly, even if it's a little bit on the grass or something like that. All right? Let's talk about evaluations and getting yourself evaluated by people that have been around a little bit longer. I would think know some more things about umpiring than you do and have some, insight into what can make you better. Now, sometimes, you naturally get evaluated by your partners, and they could be a more or a less experienced umpire, and they might notice something and give you some feedback that can make you better. Our goal should be to try to get a little bit better every game that we work or every series that we work. Sometimes that doesn't always happen, but that is always the goal. I've been lucky over the course of my career, and definitely this season so far, to have worked with some really good umpires that know some things, and learned some things that they share with me, and I ask for feedback. I said, you got anything for me? What'd you notice? And I usually get something, Sometimes, it's nice when, they say, hey, you did a good job, or, you were consistent with this or that. That's good. But, if they've got a little something that, doesn't bruise your ego or whatever, that you can get a little bit better on, that's good. So, and I've had that on a few occasions. I also was lucky enough to work a Big Ten non-con this year. I was supposed to have one last year, but it got washed out. But anyway, I was able to work that, and one of the NCAA regional, evaluators was there because he lives in the area as well. Nonetheless, my whole crew, it was a 4-man crew, we were evaluated, and I got an evaluation from him, which I thought was very spot on, and useful. It's a little intimidating, to be evaluated by somebody like that, and you certainly don't want to mess something up and look foolish and hurt yourself and hurt your career if you do something that's not so great. I had one situation on a fly ball to right center. It was a home run ball, actually, with nobody on base, and I've been working a lot of 3-man up to that game, and so in 3-man that normally would have been my ball, but I started to step toward the ball as if it was mine. I didn't read my second base umpire as well as I should have. It's always that half a second or maybe even less than a half a second that can really make a difference, that pause, they say pause, read, react, and you really need to do that. And, the more umpires we add on the baseball field, the more time we have to read things and pause, and we have more time to get to where we need to be. So that was something he noticed, of course, and he put that in the evaluation, but it was definitely warranted. And also, I didn't have any plays or anything that I missed. I thought I was fine there. But I was working first base, and he basically talked about how, I was a little more mechanical, I guess, and getting to my spots on ground balls and things like that. And, for that game, I probably was, because I had a feeling, and because guys had talked about it, that we might be evaluated, and so I want to do things more like the textbook kind of thing. And so, one step here, this and that, and getting set. And I don't think I'm normally as like that, but I definitely was probably a little bit more that game, and it's something to think about. And he's saying, you gotta, there's different positions and different spots that you can be in to get a good read and look at plays at first base. And obviously sometimes you gotta get, a second look, if the play kind of changes, and be able to, shift yourself a little bit to be able to get a great look at a potential play. I didn't have any of those that I really needed that on, but that was definitely something that I took to heart. I'm going to work on that, because if you're working the bases, I don't care, 2 man on up, you got a lot of plays at first base, so that's something you can work on. For those of you that have aspirations to work 3-man, 4-man type games, you can always work on your pause, read, react while you're in A. You got to be cutting into the infield grass a lot more often, but you can pause and see that ball that you have to right field when there's nobody on base, and react to it properly and do what you need to do. I mean, if you are doing that in 2-man, once you are able to work those 3- and 4-man games, then you're going to be much better off and reading those fly balls and reacting much better down the road. So anyway, I urge all of you out there, no matter what level you're working, to seek those evaluations either from your peers or from higher ups that you might come in contact with, and try to make yourself a little bit better umpire.
This episode is brought to you by Unstoppable. Discover the inspiring true story about Anthony Robles, who defied every expectation to become a national wrestling champion in Unstoppable, a new original movie from Amazon MGM Studios and director William Goldenberg, evoking the excitement and camaraderie of classic sports dramas and thrilling wrestling matches. Unstoppable features an all-star ensemble cast, including Jarrell Jerome, Jennifer Lopez, Don Cheadle, Michael Pena, and Bobby Cannavale. Watch Unstoppable now, exclusively on Amazon Prime Video.
All right, well, let's talk about 3-man. 3-man is always a fun thing to talk about and always a fun thing to work. In the summer league that I assign stuff here in the spring for them to battle, BATL, Baseball All Travel League. For their tournaments, we've come across an agreement with them. Nick Sweeney, our umpire-in-chief, former minor league umpire and college umpire that helps instruct all the umpires, and I do my best to help him as well. Anyway, we decided with the battle directors to run 3-man for semifinals and finals games for all the levels. 9U, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, whatever. If we have enough umpires, which is always a challenge, of course. And so we had the first go at this last weekend. In a pretty big tournament that they had at the big sports complex here in the Grand Rapids, Michigan area. And the weather wasn't the best, but, they got pretty much all the games in. And they worked a 3-man. And I know you're thinking, we worked a 3-man on a 10U field and stuff? Yeah, we did. It wasn't always, the best 3-man. And we Nick did what he could to kind of pregame with all the guys before. We sent them some information to help them study up on some things. Very few of them had much experience with 3-man prior, and even if they did have some experience, it maybe wasn't the best run system that they had done. But anyway, we did what we could. And it was well received. Parents that were there certainly liked it. Coaches liked it. Because even not well-run three-man is better than not well-run two-man. Whereas two-man, you might be way across the field trying to make a call on something. Whereas three-man, even if you're not quite doing what you're supposed to, you're more than likely going to end up with an umpire pretty close to a play or a base and able to make a call, and that always has better optics and goes over a lot better, right? So, yeah, I think it was a success, and we will continue to try to teach and make that better. Now, it's going to be a little trickier once the other assigner, Bruce Doane, who assigns through the Grand Rapids Umpire Alliance that we have here too. He's got a lot of tournaments, and when he's got a big tournament going on than I do, then I might not always have the availability to do three-man for all the levels. It might just be the bigger fields, of course, and maybe the full-size fields, if we can even do that. So we'll do what we can for sure. But it makes me want to jump out there sometimes and work with some of the guys, not just because I like to work three-man, which I do. It was just nice to be able to try to teach and help some people learn it and maybe like it. Because three-man compared to, two-man, you got a lot to do, man. You're running around a lot, and that's just what it is. Four-man, yeah, that's great. I mean, you got everything covered so well, but frequently, if the game's kind of a humdinger, you don't always have a whole lot to do, particularly at like third base or something. But in three-man, you usually got something to do most all the time, no matter if you're got the plate first or third. Stuff's happening, you're moving, and you can still get good coverage for things, and it's a pretty good system and fun to work, I think. I've been lucky this year to have had quite a few three-man games, and I'm getting more and more comfortable with it. They talk about, Malcolm Gladwell and the 10,000 hours. I'm certainly well below 10,000 hours or whatever you might want to say for three-man, but I've gotten to the level where I feel pretty comfortable out there most of the time. I mean, there's always a potential thing or two here and there that can trip me up, but definitely all the routine kind of things, I'm pretty good. And you know that when your body kind of naturally moves where it's supposed to while you're working the system. I mean, that's kind of what you become a little more automated. I mean, you don't want to be, flat out automated, because you want to be able to react properly and officiate the situation the best that you can. But you want to be moving where you need to and not always have to think about every little thing that you're doing out there. Some things, though, that I talked about with some of the guys there, because I went out and watched, and I was pleased with how things had gone. We only have, like I explained to guys, there's only like there's only three rotations in three-man, right? Of course, you got the rotation with, a double tag situation with first and second. You've got a rotation with nobody on base and a ball that's hit down the line or up the gap and nobody goes out, and you're going to have a rotation there with the plate umpire up to third. Same situation with the guy on first base. If nobody goes out and there's a ball where that runner on first, might get to third base. And of course, the plate umpire, has responsibilities with touches and maybe plays back to first base if with nobody out, the first base umpire is to go out. But that's about it. Once you have those things down, then guys are always worried about reverse rotations. And so I explained, you have those things. And then anytime, 99% of the time, anytime the plate umpire is got to stay home because their guy is in scoring position, then, the other two umpires are going to reverse rotate. So that helps them. It's hard for guys to pregame, and then it's hard for guys to pre-pitch situations. But once they get those things, it's like, I've got first and third. Okay, well, there's a guy on third, it's in scoring position. Plate guy's saying there, okay, well, we have a reverse rotation if that, batter runner is going to go to second base. Because, it's the batter runner, right? So, anyway, it helps them start thinking a little bit. We'll see how we do. We had a few of the fields where, Nick was talking and said, we can just reverse rotate every time and not rotate. Just have the plate guy stay home. That's the easiest thing for him to do. He just stays there. and you got the other two guys that can just move back and forth and do it. It's one way you can do it. I mean, simplify it a little bit. I know, like, for the state finals here in Michigan for high school, when, they're working 4-man, they have guys go out on every fly ball. And you're like, okay, we're not going to have guys read it. We're just going to say, you go out. Because we got 3 other guys. They can just rotate where they need to, and you have everything covered. It kind of takes the, in a way, to me, a little bit of the fun away, but you certainly will get lots of mess-ups. And, you don't ever want to get those situations where there's a play somewhere and nobody's there, right? So if that's the case, then I think it's definitely worthwhile to go with those simplified kind of routes. So I'm curious if any of you out there are able to work 3-man or 4-man in any of your summer league games, if those opportunities arise. So let me know how that might have gone for you, or, what questions you might have about that. They're certainly fun systems to work, and especially if you're working a lot of 2-man and you get an opportunity to work 3 or 4-man, it just kind of freshens everything up and kind of reinvigorates you a bit, so that you kind of, you're paying attention better, and you're obviously thinking about what you're trying to do, and it just kind of brings you right back into the game, I feel. All right. So anyway, those are my thoughts that I've had recently on 3-man and 4-man. So there you have it, another episode of the Hammer and Umpire Podcast. Thank you once again for sticking with me and listening, I hope, to the end. But, as always, you could skip around and listen to whatever segments you want. That's fine by me. I finished my plate job today. I had the middle plate job for my series here, and decided I'd knock out the rest of this podcast and do some of the assigning tasks that I need to do, that I'm not necessarily looking forward to doing, but they need to be done, and get a few other things accomplished here. But one of the things I wanted to accomplish was to reach out to all of you and give you this podcast here as we kind of reach the last stages of our spring season for most of us. And if you're someone that is going to be working some postseason baseball, I urge you to embrace that. Know that, not everybody always gets those opportunities. Take it seriously. And I know that there'll be a little more pressure, and the players are going to be a little more antsy to win those games. But it's the same baseball game that you've been umpiring all season. So just bear down and do the best that you can, and relax and make the best calls that you can out there. If you want to reach out to me via voice message that you can put here on the Anchor platform, or through an email, that would be wonderful. I always look forward to some feedback from different listeners out there. That's definitely much appreciated. Until next time, keep calling strikes.